Today on Truth Be Told, we're diving into the fast-moving world of artificial intelligence and what it means for your professional career and your personal development. From new tools that can sift through mountains of evidence in seconds to AI-powered interview analysis, the potential is game-changing when it comes to investigations. But with great power comes great responsibility. We're going to talk about the risks of bias, bad data, and the over-reliance on the machine. Stay tuned because the future of investigations, automation, and communication is here, and it's evolving faster than you think. This is the Truth Be Told podcast, where we unlock the secrets of strategic communication.
What makes Control Tech unique in the RFID space is that we're focused really on RFID and how it works to solve complex problems. We sit down with our customers and understand what their challenge is, and we come up with the right mix of hardware, software, the type of tag, and then the process that's needed. We're agnostic. We're not trying to stick you with a specific product category or of hardware or tags. We're really focused on making the technology work in the environments.
Welcome to this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast. I'm with my good friend, Tom Meehan, certified forensic interviewer and CEO of Control Tech. How's it going?
How are you, Dave? Good to see you.
Wonderful. Got to see you again this week. Road warrior you are. Can't AI just start traveling for you? Why do you even have to get in a plane anymore?
It can. I think I love how people are constantly saying remote work, and I still think there's nothing like being in person. Like as you know, like trying to do a presentation, trying to do anything where you can't get the feel. But the road warrior sometimes, as you know, also stinks. Like we got to see each other. I had a lot of good fun at the Access Leadership Retail Forum, and then I was supposed to be at another conference, and United did not cooperate. So I spent 18 hours at an airport trying to get from point A to point B, and that's when I wish that I could just clone myself and have a little hologram walking around.
You should just start doing presentations at the airports. That'd be better for us. Just host.
It would be actually. We probably could give a discount, right? Like we don't need room, so everybody's.
That's true. Yeah. As long as we get loyalty miles, then we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me again. I know a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with you from the field, but also from our first season. We wrapped up season 1 with an episode with you talking about AI, and after listening to you this week, realizing that we could probably do an episode weekly because it's changing so much. So I thought it'd be relevant for people to kind of hear what's new, what's coming, what to be afraid of, what to be excited about. So I'd kick off with this because I saw you talk about it this week, and public service announcement is that people should not be eating one rock a day put glue on pizza. Neither of these things are good. Why am I talking about that, and why is that relevant?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things about AI is that it is rapidly evolving, and I say this all the time, and I say it half jokingly. Humans can't have nice things. We're just not allowed to have nice things. We focus so heavily on how to break something that it takes away from it. So that's actually a fairly old example. In the earlier stage, of AI about a year ago, AI search became a thing. So everybody, when thinks about ChatGPT, well, Google, and there was someone from Google there, so I always feel like have to apologize and say this. I think Google was late to the party, right? Like they miscalculated, and so Google wanted to get in the AI search game, which basically is the search engine as AI. So you get these summaries versus reading everything, which I think is incredible. And when Google first turned it on, it did what you would naturally think it would do. It would use the information on the internet. Unfortunately, some of the things that occur with generative AI, like hallucination, happened. And the example there was there was an Onion article, not a real truth source, by design, satirical, made funny, Mad Libs type stuff, a paper about eating rocks for minerals, and somehow the generative AI confused that with a real study from UC Berkeley about minerals, and it posted it together. I would also say that like people tried to make it do it by asking it questions like how many rocks is healthy, and so the AI got confused. We're past that to a big extent where AI search is, I think, actually really going to be beneficial for everyone. Where um, it will change the way we use the internet. I think today when you search, if you have AI search on, you get a summary that answers the question. There's a company that's been in the news a lot, Perplexity, that was a little bit ahead of the curve. I think Google's doing a good job at it, and I think Google's model has been and will be, top three from now on. But with AI, you can't trust everything. Uh,
Right.
so that's kind of one of the challenges.
Well, I want to explore a little bit of that. And I also, as people are kind of, some people afraid of AI, some people are leveraging AI. And you had talked about an article, and I might have the number wrong, but I think it was this prediction that 800 million jobs may be lost or replaced from AI. And
Yep.
I thought you had a good take on that. So I'll kind of let you explain what maybe you think that actually looks like.
Yeah, so I don't know that I have a fair prediction of what impact will be. So there, two of the big four firms, and I don't actually remember which was which. One said 300 million, the other said 800 million. This is a big number, right? Like there's 340 million people that live in the United States. So you're talking about a massive amount of people would be displaced, is what both of these studies said. And what I equate that to is, so I do a lot of reading, and I've read as many academic papers as I could find about AI. And then about, ChatGPT released, OpenAI released ChatGPT 32 months ago. And when this started, I had already read a lot and was really waiting to, ready to start speaking on it. And I started speaking on it almost right away. And I said, if you go back in history, and when you think of the industrial revolutions, the steam engine was going to ruin everything. It was going to kill all these jobs. People were, and it didn't. And then in Industry 4.0, fast forward in manufacturing is the digitization, digital transformation. And when Industry 4.0 was spoke about years ago, the fourth industrial revolution was like, there's going to be this mass automation and everybody's going to lose their jobs. And if you go back in history, every time there is a radical, change in industrial revolutions, someone might say AI is not close. It really is. It's actually in some cases bigger than an industrial revolution, however crazy that is. There's a lot of naysayers. Y2K. Hopefully some of the listeners. I was alive. I was working, and I literally saw people like take their savings out to buy fuel. Like it was mass hysteria. And
Right.
when you woke up January 1st, guess what happened? Nothing.
Nothing. Right.
Zero. And so a lot of this is hysteria caused by misinformation. A lot of it's also hysteria caused by, what occurs. I equate it to growing up when cable TV came out, it was going to rot our brains. And when cell phones came out, it was the end of the world. Like every time there's the internet, right? It's going to destroy everything. So I think we have a bad track record of predicting well. With that said, and I didn't get a chance to really, I only had an hour, right? So you're asking specific questions. I was covering slides.
Right.
There are some differences with AI. AI right now, there's been about $150 billion invested in it. That's more GDP than most countries. There's more investment in AI than all of the EU countries together's GDP. So take that in. So like if you take that into consideration, so there are some things that are drastically different here. It's probably closer to the internet than an industrial revolution. And the internet, no doubt, changed the way we do everything, right? Like the way we communicate, we do everything. I think it's easy to talk about the bad stuff. It's easy for the media. It's also, we grew up with Terminator, right? We grew up with movies that depicted that this would happen. HAL 2000, right? The computer's going to take over. Here's the scary truth: is there's going to be job displacement. I think the job displacement will have more to do with people that are so focused on being afraid instead of understanding how it impacts their day-to-day life, both personally and professionally. That if you're a company or in a profession and you wake up every day saying, I'm going to go away, I can guarantee you are. If you wake up by saying, I'm going to figure out how to leverage this to make me more efficient, you have a much better chance of not being displaced.
Right. Embrace the tech. Well, that's what, today in this episode, what I want people to walk away with is how can I leverage AI to make my life more efficient? Um, Maybe start thinking a little bit differently versus replacing thought. And I think that's part of the challenge. But part of the reasons that we still have to inspect what we are using AI from, I was pulling up how AI has incorporated or found itself embedded in the criminal justice system. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how investigators can use it as a strength. But I just saw this was just this week, so I was just going to read this headline. I don't know if you've seen this one or yet or not. I know you're always reading the news for AI headlines, but Australian lawyer apologizes for AI generated errors in murder case. This is from Associated Press. And so this just came out this morning. You hadn't seen this yet, Tom. It's got a senior lawyer in Australia apologized to the judge for filing submissions in a murder case that included fake quotes and non existent case judgments generated by AI.
So I've not seen that, but I cite the two first big cases that hit were both New York lawyers, and the New York Times picked one up and really did they just did a real deep dive on it. And I think anytime you're taking AI into a legal aspect, I would say it's akin to Googling and using Reddit as a source. Like, you have to understand the source. You have to understand what it is. It is garbage in, garbage out. I would argue that this is the thing that no one talks about. We talk about the 6 cases that lawyers got caught. We don't talk about probably the hundreds of thousands where it's working. And we talk about a lot when I speak about models. So people always, it's funny at this event, I'm not going to, just because I always like to ask people before I say who they are, but someone that would be considered an expert in their field in technology while we were having a drink said, "What's your favorite model?" And then about an hour later, somebody else asked me the same question who is not an expert in their field, is just, in AI, just a regular guy. And that's like a common question. And my answer is it depends on what you're using it for. If you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, I don't know that if you're a security professional, I'm going there yet. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you're if you're an architect, you're going to want to use a specialized model that is designed to help limit some of those challenges. And like legal models, there are some great legal models out there that try to help it. They'll all say at the bottom, check the source. And so, not that these lawyers are lazy, but what I'm saying is you could still increase your output by 10x by just going like, I'm going to make sure the source is real.
Right.
That's it. And in the New York case, this poor lawyer, and why I say it's poor, because they took the transcripts and put it in the New York Times, and he made a quote to something along the lines of, "I never would have thought the computer would just make up case law. Like, why would it do that and cite
Right.
things?" So people are like, "Oh, he should know better." And I'm going like, yeah, but if he Googled it and found it, we would not have the same impression, so it's about using AI as a tool. And if you're a legal professional listening to this, I'm not suggesting you don't use it. I'm suggesting that you ramp up your intake, but you take instead of taking an hour and a half to find something on Westlaw, you find it in 30 seconds. You cite the source and make sure it's real. You're gonna get a good, clean result. I think this might be media banter. Like, you don't hear about the good, you only hear about the bad. But in a legal case, we're playing with people's lives, right? Like,
Well, right. And I don't want my doctor going on Chat GPT after they saw some weird growth on my shoulder or something and trying to figure out what that was the safest thing I could come up with. I don't know what other medical condition, maybe I have a breathing issue would have been safer, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, I want to make sure that somebody who's got industry expertise and making life decisions is looking at verifiable sources. But you're right, you can probably scale your search that way. What's the difference? And I know you've talked before about hallucinations, but what is the difference between me doing a simple Google search engine search or a Chat GPT or a Gemini
yeah.
search?
So it's kind of the way it works. So when you think of a Google or a traditional internet search, what the internet does is it indexes the web. So it actually takes everything and creates an index and basically essentially a gigantic catalog of everything that's on it, and it's driven by keywords. So the difference is Google search does not have the ability to manipulate the output. You're going to search Dave Thompson and it's going to point you to something. When you use Google, it takes that index, it pulls out, here are all the Dave Thompsons. Oh, I want Dave Thompson CFI. I click on that. That website may contain incorrect information, but Google doesn't have the ability to manipulate that information. When you're using a generative AI search, it's very, very different. So the way generative AI really works, and I'm going to simplify this, is your input, which is a prompt, goes out to a model which contains all of this data in a very, very interesting format. And it formulates a response based on what it thinks you want to know. And it's called, you'll hear unexplained events. Hallucinations sometimes are an unexplained event where the model is trying to answer the question and thinks it's answering the question correctly. The biggest difference is it has the ability to take information from a whole bunch of pieces of data to answer your question. You are starting to see, and you should see this pretty regularly, the ability to actually you can go in and cite sources in most models now. Like even ChatGPT, it'll show you the source. Yep. What it's doing there is it still can hallucinate. So don't fool yourself, because you still need to click that source. Back to my Onion article, the source could be nonsense. It could be just you and I having banter about White Castle and someone searching like, what's a chicken ring? It can't be chicken, right? Real example. The model could say chicken rings don't contain chicken based on that statement, where you'd have to read it. Probably not the best example because everybody's like, what is he talking about? But the generative AI is creating an answer for you, and it's really predicting. I think we're getting better at less hallucination. You'll hear things like context prompting and prompt engineering, but at the end of the day, the model wants to answer the question so it can still make sense.
That search that Tom's referring to is one that I did, because onions come in rings, but chickens don't. And so I was very confused how we're ordering these things. But, it's when you bring that up, I'm thinking that at the conference this week, the James Stark at Axis, he introduced you, but he let AI introduce you, right? So he had a voice assist and said, introduce our next speaker. And it was very cool. But so as you're explaining that, if somebody asked, like, to introduce me, and said, introduce Dave Thompson, and he's speaking at this NBA conference, right? It's going to probably pull up a lot of Dave Thompson interview interrogation, but there's also a Dave Thompson professional NBA player, right? That might pull some of that bio that's clearly not me. Yep. But you're right. So from a Google search, I would be able to pinpoint which article, who are we talking about, but AI is going to just create something that sounds like it's what you want to hear.
Yeah, and I think if you're thinking of the medical profession, I think doctors and lawyers, because of liability, no one wants me to say that, right? Not because it's right or wrong, because of liability, are more apt to use a specialized model. And guess what? Specialized models cost more money. It's a way to monetize it. But I also will tell you 100%, and there's a lot out there, that you are starting to see clerks using AI to research because it's faster. I don't think there's anything wrong. As a matter of fact, I think you're crazy to not use AI to search. It's just take what would have taken an hour before and get it to 30 seconds so you get quicker to this is not the right thing. Right. And we as humans tend to be technocrats and go like, why should I use my brain? That's what the computer told me, where I'm going like, let's look at this. I think that in the medical field, what I hope to see, and there's a lot of great research on cancer, is this isn't about AI replacing the radiologist. This is about AI helping the radiologist detect something that a human might miss, because the model can look at billions of things at once and a human can only look at one. And there's a lot around cancer and radiology to show that it's detecting breast cancer and lung cancer with a 97% accuracy earlier on. And that's just, it's the same kind of akin to, we're in the physical security space, like facial recognition isn't actually different than you and me getting when I started in my career, the police would come to Home Depot with a Polaroid book and go, can you look through this book and pick the person out that you think it was? And someone will go like, oh, it's not, AI is not right. And I'm going like, you think it's better that Tom, 22-year-old Tom was like, that's the dude.
Right.
That's
Right.
better. Is that actually better? So yeah, we're in a really weird time because I think there's so many people that want to either say it's the best thing or the worst thing versus going like, this is a great way to be more efficient.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point too. And I mean, as you know, I'm a loyal fan of America's team, the Buffalo Bills. And so I'm curious why, how can AI detect maybe cancer at a 97% accuracy rate and we still can't figure out if a catch is a catch and if a ball crossed a first down marker? How is AI not helping us yet?
So it is. We just there's reluctance. So what was it? Wasn't it just recent that they did baseball had the instant replay added?
Right.
So there. Look, this is my opinion, right? I'm not a professional here. There's a lot of people that don't want AI in sports because it takes away some of the thrill and excitement. Like,
Sure. Like the
do you remember?
designated hitter, same
Yeah,
problem.
yeah. You remember when the instant replay started, and it starts to take away from what you and I grew up with in sports. So I'm quite certain that you're going to see AI and video being used any sports that you can, but they're probably going to, just like they do in football, like you can use it once, you can use it twice,
Right.
because it takes away from the stigma of the game. And like a lot of times, this is the hardest thing for people. Everything isn't always black and white. There's sometimes two ways to look at things. And so if you're a referee, look, if you're outside the line, you're outside the line. If you're just touching the line and the grass moves, like the turf moves, like there's all these weird things. So anytime
Right.
everything for the sport piece,
It depends if
very,
you're wearing a Chiefs jersey or not as well,
yeah,
apparently.
but that's as I say that, but that's part of the stigma of the sport. Imagine if you took away all of the fun where
Right.
you're at, like,
Right.
what would the banter be if the computer is making every call? Like it becomes kind of, then the sport becomes less sport like. But I do think you're going to see way more AI in it, and like I think we already have a lot of AI. We just don't think of it as AI, like where you're drawing lines on the field. Like my AI on my camera is not working right now, right? Like the head looks funny. Like AI isn't everything. I think that's the other misconception is AI is not new. Generative AI is newer, but AI is, we've been using our whole lives. You and I, we're similar ages. AI is 70 years old. The implementation is there. The generative AI is definitely new. And now the natural language processing with generative AI is what gets the creep factor, I say to people. And models, at least today, don't create information the way people think they do. They take input. It's like my biggest comment. I did this presentation. I'll have done it. The 24th time was at Access. I was supposed to do it in Chicago and I missed it. I'll do it again in 2 weeks. And there's common themes like, how do you deal with bias? Models are biased. And I'm like, no, people are biased. People create the data that goes in the model. So we'll never, ever, as long as we live, alleviate bias until people aren't biased. And the last time I checked, that ain't happening.
Right.
So it's
Right.
that it works faster than people. That's the problem.
Well, what's interesting, so I'm going to take both of those concepts and put them together because I'm thinking about from the sports landscape, when you talk about a large language model and just looking at tons of data, the analytics in sports is where AI is and continue to be leveraged of
Yeah.
looking at thousands and thousands of data points and plays and trying to help design the next player, then making a decision on what the next play would be. But then when you talk about biases and then bring it back to the legal system, there's another article written by a couple attorneys, that Dean Strang and Jerry Buting, who actually coincidentally were attorneys of Brendan Dassey making a murderer case, which is one that people probably heard me talk a lot about. But they recently wrote an article about the fear of AI with juries and how a juror may get on Chat GPT at the end of the day and say, here's what I'm thinking. What should I think about this? Or how should I feel about this? Or what does this evidence mean? And then inherently, if there's already bias in AI or what their prompt is, might further influence themselves, if that makes sense. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, send me the articles. I'd love to read it. But so here's my thought on that. If I was on jury duty and I went back and asked you your opinion, would you tell me I can't tell you, or would you tell me your opinion?
Off the record, I would tell you my opinion for sure.
Right?
Right.
And are you an unbiased individual?
No.
So that's the
Right.
difference here is that the difference here is a machine is doing it versus a person. So the risk is that we as humans think that that machine is the same as talking to a trusted source. And at the end of the day, what's the real answer? The juror's not supposed to ask anybody what anything means except for the judge. So like my question is, what's your fear? Your fear is a machine is doing it and it might make a worse decision than a human? Like
Right.
that that's
Yeah.
that's the, that's kind of the fear. And I haven't been able to debate with anybody on this because every time I get on with someone with it, we end up hugging and kissing and agreeing. And I'm like, I
Right.
would love for someone to continue the debate because I don't in my full-time job, I do nothing with facial rec. People ask me about facial rec. The reason I stay away from the topic is because no one likes what I say. Is I don't think there's any problem with facial recognition. I think it's a great technology. There needs to be regulation on any technology that works that way. Not because of facial rec, because people don't use things correctly, and
Right.
people are like get frustrated with me that the technology is not the issue. You have to create guardrails around any technology, or you run into this challenge. And I can guarantee you that, there was just, there was, I want to be careful because I don't want either one of us to be, there was just a really, really big case that I think a lot of people are watching. And I can guarantee you everybody was using ChatGPT to like, what's the difference between trafficking, extortion, and commissioning of prostitution? Because you don't know. So I can guarantee you that people are using ChatGPT to do that. But I guess at the end of the day, those are the same people that would be going to Reddit or Google before.
Right.
So
That's
I
true.
think, I think,
I think like, and that's a good point. I think it's like, what's the difference between asking your friend and asking the computer? They're both going to be biased. I think what you have with ChatGPT is that automation bias, right? Well, if the system told me, there's probably more credibility behind it than if Tom told me, well, I know Tom is, feels this way about that thing politically or feels that about that, so I'm going to take it that way. But when ChatGPT answers your prompt, well, it must be true.
yeah, I think it's how you ask the question too. Like, I think we as humans inherently have bias and subconscious biases. And if, I remember the first time that I got picked for jury duty, which I was shocked. And then I immediately was taken off of jury duty when they were like, wait a second, this guy sends people to jail for a living. And I told them, and then I went on and I'm like, I believe I'm unbiased. And then I started asking questions and they had this little conference and they were like, there's conflict. Like
Right.
you do investigations. And I'm like, I told you that. Like I was ready for this case. But like in my head, I don't assume you're guilty, but I'm the person that really wants to look at the evidence because evidence doesn't lie. If it's a video, like that was always the way I thought. But I also believe, as someone that's done a lot of interviews in my life, and I don't want to get too far into this, but like what you see isn't always what you see. What people say isn't always what it is. You've got to really look at everything at a high level. That's where there's risk with AI. If you have confirmation bias in AI, is where I think there's a concern, where you're going in and asking a prompt. I think that
Right.
Dave Thompson did this because of this. AI is going to go, well, based on what you said,
Makes
this is why
sense.
you're right.
Right.
So, there's certainly risk there, Dave. I just don't know, like, it's akin to like you can't use your internet on the jury. Like, I don't know what the rules are. Like, there are some juries that you're not allowed to use internet. There are
Right.
some rules.
What about on the flip side? And I didn't prompt you with this, so well, really with anything. I just told Tom, get on the podcast. I'm going to ask you questions,
Yeah.
but it's to the credibility of the depth of your knowledge here. I had Natalie Gordon on an earlier episode this season. Part of what she does is jury consulting and does a lot of research with mock juries and even shadow juries where they're trying to evaluate every day and poll a shadow jury of what's a real jury feeling and those kind of things. What about the use of AI in that context where it's more for preparation, right? So if attorneys can present an opening argument or a line of questioning and get feedback from AI on how might the average person perceive this message or this tone?
So I probably can't speak for the average person. I can tell you that there's a real good example where if you're not figuring out how AI is going to play into role, things are going to change. I think we need to start exploring that. And this is where I go back to, and I'm not going to win this conversation because the government is not aligned right now with us. There really is a push to not regulate because they want to encourage the spend. $150 billion in spend in the U.S., more GDP than all of the European countries is a very good thing for our economy. There needs to be regulation on what it can be and can't be used for. But I do think if I was in her role, and I don't know her, and I did not hear the podcast, although I think I saw a snippet or something now that I think
She's
about it.
fantastic. I recommend
Yeah.
people go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would argue if I was her, I'd be exploring deeply in how AI will play a role in it, because here's what I equate everything to in AI. Everything you do research before, you can do faster. If you were really a researcher before, I don't think you did your research and just checked the box. I think when you and I read an article or a book, we don't go like, yeah, I learned something new. That's 100%. Like, there's got to be some level of it. But I am encouraging anybody who does any type of research, including, we talked about this with interview, interrogation, and investigations. You've got to figure out how to make yourself more efficient, or you're going to have someone like me come around and, in my full-time capacity, figure out how to monetize a way to make it faster and more efficient for the business.
Right.
I'll tell this story, and then real quick, is I visited 3 extremely large corporations, maybe the biggest in the world, in the last 2 months. And all 3 of them, I met with IT folks, and they said it differently, but they all said the same thing. One actually said, there were 2 gentlemen there, showed me a software package, and there was another gentleman with us, and they said, wow, that's pretty impressive. How long did it take you? And without taking a breath, he said, oh, 2 weeks. I used AI. And immediately my CEO hat went on, and I'm like, I wonder if his boss knows that, because I could take a team of 12 and move it to 1 and save all that money. And then I went to another company, even bigger, and I met with a larger group. And they did not say it took 2 weeks. They said, we're having a lot of success with being more efficient using AI. And I said, like vibe coding? And he was like, yeah, oh yeah. He's like, I go home on the weekend, and when I come in Monday, have something that was a concept done. So while he didn't say it took 2 weeks, he doesn't realize he just told me he did it over the weekend, 2 days. Yeah. And then the third company, another top 10 company in the world. So you're talking think of the scale of companies and what I'm talking about here. And this person said, hey, we published this. 70% of our coding is going to be AI in the future. We can do what took us months before in hours. And so if you're in any capacity and you're not starting to explore how I can be more efficient, I do think there's risk for you. And if you're jumping on the doom bandwagon of saying this is going away, we're crazy to use this, probably not the best way. Probably the best way is to say, hey, I still got to do my research. I still got to talk to people and interview them. But now I can take my notes and have AI format them. I can take my transcripts and format them. Language accents are no longer a problem because it understands it. I can actually have AI identify tone and inflection in real time. And I know, Dave, that doesn't mean anything, but we all, that a jury selection, that person's listening to what they're saying.
Sure.
I could be totally off on this, but this is my professional opinion. We've got to start to look at how it impacts us.
Yeah, well, and it's a good point. At the meeting this week, we had a session. Lisa Mitchell, who was another podcast guest, did a great session on how to kind of craft a pitch if you're gonna try to sell something. And even if you could be trying to ask your boss for a raise, or it could be getting a greater headcount in staff or whatever. And one of the groups used AI to create their sales pitch. Right. So we had different groups, and some groups got together and they talked about it and they discussed it and they practiced. And one group fell into the technology black hole and used AI, which was fantastic, right? AI created a slide deck for them. It created the exact pitch based on the structure that Lisa presented. The problem was when they went to present and let AI do the presentation itself, the internet went out and there was no service and the team was kind of stuck. And it reminded me of a presentation I did once. And I was standing on a stage at a podium doing a PowerPoint, whatever, and the power went out and the laptop dies, the projector dies. And I still have to get up there for an hour and deliver a message. And so for the people that at least those two examples showed me, if you have the fear of AI taking over, you just need to make yourself more relevant, right?
Yep.
What's the human element? Do you know your content well enough that you can still speak to it? Do you still believe in what you're selling? Or are you just copy and pasting what you found on Chat GPT, and then you fall into where you just said is, why do I need 12 of you? Maybe I just need one.
Yeah, I think your example is a great example of why I think the human element of everything needs to be there. So like I present a couple times a month. I have issues. You have to plan for those issues. So I think it was Microsoft. If I'm quoting Microsoft incorrectly, about 3 weeks ago, they released a prediction on jobs, and one of the jobs they said that was most at risk was an outbound sales and sales rep. And I would say to you, and this is the person, not the AI. If it was you and and I wish I was there, and you and I used AI, and then prepped for our presentation as professional speakers, the lights could have went off. There could have been a fire in the back, and we still would have presented that data that AI created perfectly. And I think the miss is AI is not it's not replacing me. It's mimicking some of my intelligence and behavior to make me more efficient.
Right.
So if you're in sales, I would argue that you should be using AI to 10x your output, but it's not replacing you. It's reminding you to follow up. It's, I owe Dave a follow up, and this is what I should be saying. Here's the action item. By the way, here's some suggested comments. If that's what's really good at. If you make a pitch, I would argue this is the same thing as if I just said to you, like, Dave, go sell RFID. Here's the deck. You probably could do it because you're a professional speaker and you'd read it. But 90% of the population would go like, I can't sell this. I don't understand it. And I would go like, you don't need to. You just need to be able to tell the story of why it's important.
Right.
And so in your example, you're kind of solidifying what I've always said is the AI is not going to replace the human engagement. It should replace all the busy work that we're doing today that isn't productive.
Yeah.
And by the way, I could be like, we could blow ourselves up tomorrow, but it's not going away. Like, it's not going away. It isn't. And I think what I was impressed with at this leadership forum is the bulk of the room said they use it every day for something. Now the question is, do you know what to use it for? Are you using it efficiently? Are you putting your company at risk? All those things. And those are all different.
The sales comment you made. So there's a company out there, ORBB, that a friend of mine's working on. It's really fascinating where it's not replacing the human element of outreach, but it's scaling your ability to find who should I reach out to. It's finding the connections that already exist, but you just don't know how to find them.
Yep.
But then the human is still picking up the phone and making the call, which is powerful.
Yep.
I want to just for our last few minutes, I want to wrap up because we've talked about a lot of the what's scary and how to lean into it maybe, but some good use cases, examples if I'm an investigator or just a person in a job, what are some good uses of AI? And when we keep saying AI, there's so many different platforms that people could use and models, like you said. But what are some different things I should start thinking about if I can log onto this today and this can help me? If let's just do it in three ways: maybe pre the investigation, maybe then the interview, and then maybe post interview. Just a couple takeaways.
Yeah, I think that for investigations purposes, my legal disclaimer is make sure you check with your organization of what you should and shouldn't be doing. And the reason I say that is these models are not created equal. If you have a corporate model that you're paying for that your company owns, there's a high likelihood that that data doesn't get shared with the other model. If it's free, they're sharing your data. Everybody write that down. If it's free, they're using your data. I don't care what you read. You will see a lot of these models in a $20 a month tier will allow you to say, do not use my data to train the model. Do not save my data in memory. You still need to check with your organization, whether you're public or private. Short, long answer here is use the big models, Gemini, Google, Chat GPT. Try to stay off the offshoot open source, not because they're bad, but because usually when you have a big monster company behind it, it's easier to follow the privacy trail. Pre-interview, I think the things that you can do that you, and Dave, you may, this is something I think we wanted to talk about out live, is like you have the ability to go and talk and you have the ability to, I used to tape myself. People think I'm crazy when I say this. 25, 26 years ago, I would literally be driving my car. There, I didn't have a smartphone, and I used to tape myself with those little recorders, and I used to just my whole drive go through what I was going to say, and I wouldn't even play it back. It was just my way of getting comfortable when I was very early in my career. You could do that today and ask it, how many times did I say, how many times did I have elongated pauses? How many times did I say a sentence that I didn't complete? A live coach on just grammar and speak, forget about the Wicklander steps. Like, just, hey, did I sound unauthentic? Did I sound robotic? And you would be amazed at ChatGPT saying, well, like in the beginning, you spoke really fast, then you slowed really down, and then you sped up again. Your story I didn't understand the context of your story. So I think in pre, you have the ability to talk to an agent and just get a feel for it. I also think if you're writing an outline, I haven't done an interview in over 10 years, but if you're writing an outline, you can do that by voice and have it type it for you, and it's going to be grammatically correct and see what it is. I think you also can, in an interview prep plan, say, what am I missing? What are some things that I could look at? What are some of the challenges there? Keeping in mind that none of this is foolproof. I actually created a guide, and what we should probably do is I'll get you a QR code that we can put on the website that people can go in for investigations professionals, that are some prompts specifically designed for, like, I'm going to do a credit card fraud interview. Like, what are some things that I should be thinking about? And I think that's the pre. The post is a little trickier, because I think the post is where there's probably more risk than the pre, in the sense of, if you're using AI to write a narrative for you, I think there's risk. If you're using AI to validate that your grammar is good and that there's a clear, concise story, like you're saying, here's my written narrative, what's missing, what doesn't make sense. And this is one where it depends on your company policy. If you're recording an interview, you really get, so I probably missed this one in the middle, you really get the ability for it to do a much better job than we will of how many times was there admission, validate the dollar numbers for you. I think we're still in the early stages of investigations. For me, it's mostly pre, like, just help me practice, and then it's narrative review. You can also, and I've actually done this for some other folks, you can also, because some of the legal things change, what does this narrative look like in court? What does this case look like? What are things that could be a challenge from an HR perspective? So I will tell you a real story. Like, I was working with a friend unrelated to my current job who had a challenge. It was definitely an investigative thing, and they called me. They're not, and said, "What would you do?" And I said, "This is what you do." And they called me, and he said, "I used AI, and AI said in the state of Illinois that this is not a terminable offense." And I said, "Well, what did you ask AI?" And then I said, "But that's not what happened, though." And I said, like, and so when he talked to me for 5 minutes, he went back in and he said, "Oh, I didn't know the difference between fraud and violation and all of these things." And he's like, AI, just asked AI, like, what's the difference? What's the difference between embezzlement, fraud, this, and AI helped him understand how to frame it to HR. But all of these things are things that I think you and I would do with a book or Google before. This is why I always go back to, like, what do I do? Like, when I would interview, like, I think probably similar to you, I did so many interviews that the process was never even a thought process. For the last 10 years of my career, I shouldn't probably say this, I didn't practice, because for the first 15, all I did is practice. So, like, people are like, you're afraid of the process? Like, no, I can interview anybody at any time. The process is never the issue. It's like, I want to make sure I have a good, solid case that I'm interviewing the right person. We should probably do a more structured one, because we should do another one just on interview and investigations, because I spent a lot of time building this guide. It's like a roadmap. Like, if you're doing a fraud case, what you'd use that GPT for, or Google Gemini or Perplexity, is different than if you're doing something else. I think if I'm a young investigator, the ability to say I'm doing an interview, I work, and you have to say it right. You know, I'm Tom. I work for ABC company. I'm an asset protection manager. I'm Wicklander certified, but this is only my second interview. I'm a little nervous. I want to go through this with you. It sounds stupid, but that's the way ChatGPT is. It's going to then go like, all right, this person's nervous. I'm looking for that. And it really does a good job of, I think it does a phenomenal job of calling out like, hey, when you said this, didn't make sense.
Right. I think that yes, we can definitely do that, and we'll link to your prompts in the show notes because that was a really really neat document you had that have really helpful for investigators. Um,
And
the
I'll make
pr
that edit.
there was one specific edit that needs to be
One
made.
typo in there.
We won't. Yeah, it's typo. Yeah. But even in investigations, what I like, and I'll end with this, and we can wrap up. But the instead of walking in with a script, right? And whether, again, it could be a job interview, it could be a sales pitch, it could be an investigative interview, whatever it is. When people walk in with a script, that's the opposite of being genuine, right? You're not adaptable, you're not flexible. And what I've seen with AI is if you have an input of even the general framework of a case, this could be a shooting or this could be theft out of a register. But even asking what are some areas I need to explore during the interview, and it will give you some, did you think about an alibi or did you think about witness list? Did you think about where the evidence is now? And it can help prompt you at least for areas that you should be asking about, which can help you then modify it to your company or agency's protocol. But at least gives you that landscape of like that secondary interviewer. And the other thing, and maybe I'm wrong here, but AI doesn't mind hurting your feelings. So it'll give you direct feedback. It'll tell you that's a no-go. Where sometimes you talk to even a supervisor or a coworker who doesn't want to give you critical feedback and they just approve something because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So I don't care.
I also think us as humans are less likely to be offended when AI says it than someone they have to look at every day. I think there's some
Right.
value. You can be more vulnerable with your ChatGPT assistant because there is that disconnect. It's like I can write, it's like people are super confrontational in email, but when you go to meet with them, they're like, like, hey, like it's the same type of thing. So
Yeah.
that's a great point. But
Yeah.
let's find time to do it because I think we could spend a whole amount of time. And I would argue that this isn't just, I say this all the time. It's not a plug. I did the CFI Evolve, and I won't say who it is, although I might next time we see him say it. He said, well, "Why would you do that? Like you're the CEO of a company. Like that's stupid." Like, and I said, "It's not." I said, "It's stupid that you think it's stupid because." I said I'm bettering myself, and I said also like if you haven't figured this out yet, like non-confrontational interviewing is the same as negotiation, is the same as selling. The principles are exactly the same. You've got to build rapport. You've got to listen, be an active listener. You've got to know when to stop talking. You've got to have a process. So there's so much crossover in the business world that I can cite to real examples. As someone that was a real investigator that went from being an investigator to a chief strategy officer to a president of a company to a CEO of a company, it aligns so remarkably close. You just have to be able to go like, well, I'm not trying to get the truth. I'm trying to get this person's buy-in. I'm trying to, build the trust. And like, I laugh because when we do negotiations, I need to build rapport, right? You've got to want to talk to me. I need to establish credibility and explain who I am and why I'm talking to you. I need you to know that I did my research and I know what I'm talking about. And then I need to ask for something and I need to be comfortable. And then I need to be prepared for you to tell me no. And then I need to be prepared to shake your hand and get to the end result, which is going to help both of us. And I'm oversimplifying it. So there's so much crossover. So when we talk about these investigations, anybody who's listening in the communications world should go like, man, and I use this, I wrote it in my book. Like there was an issue at my daughter's school, although I didn't quote that. I think I did actually say it was my daughter. I don't think my daughter knows because she was young. And I went in like I was interviewing them and it went flawlessly. And and to this day, like I wasn't the angry parent. I went in, I introduced myself, told him what I did, and I literally did like a full-fledged Wicklander interview with a PhD head of the school board. And when it started to go sideways with credibility, I said, look, I know you probably deal with a lot of parents. Like, let me just go through again what I do for a living and why I'm saying what I'm saying. And when I tell people that story, they're like, well, that's just the way you are. I'm like, no, it's the process that and it's not a plug, although it should be for you guys. I use it daily in my day-to-day life in some capacity, and it's not manipulative. It's just a good way to remind myself to listen. It's a good way to go, shh, stop it. It's not your turn to talk.
Fundamental principles of communication are
Yeah,
transferable in any
yeah,
part of our life, for sure.
exactly.
I
And maladaptive, adaptive, like when you get into this, like people don't want to talk to assholes. You
Right,
don't get the right result when you treat someone poorly. You get a result, but it's not the best result. So
right.
I know we're up on time.
Well, I was just last quick one word answer really. Would you rather, if somebody had access to your devices, let them look through your text message history or your prompt chat GPT Gemini history?
Oh, my prompt, because
It's
my
safer.
text is me. And think of the things we text each other. Come on.
I'm not disclosing any further information. So,
Yeah, yeah. Nope. Because texts are personal. Like I don't have a personal relationship with ChatGPT.
yeah, I hope
Uh,
not. That's another topic, and
Yeah, that's a
we've seen.
whole.
I just saw it in the news this morning.
Yeah,
More, especially young people
it's
getting
sad.
stuck. So, this has been great. I think it's not only informational on use AI to your benefit, become more efficient. Think about how it can help with your workflow process, but have some safety regulations put in place. So, always a good
Yeah,
lesson from you, Tom.
yeah. Good to see you. And I think next one too, we got to do some beard oil tips to get
Yeah,
the scent of the beard, so we can let everybody know.
this is not AI. This
Yes,
is
and
real. This is real
neither is this,
fertilizer.
as you can see by the white.
Yeah, it's natural. All right, Tom, I'll let you enjoy your weekend. And thanks for joining me again. Thanks to Control Tech for letting us steal you for a little bit. And thank you all for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.
Thanks for having me.
To help more listeners find our show, please provide us a rating, give us a follow, and share this episode with your colleagues. For the latest news and to engage with our guests, follow Truth Be Told on your favorite social media apps. And don't forget, we are available on all major platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and watch a video of this episode on YouTube. On behalf of our guests and valued sponsors, thanks again for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.